I found a note hidden under the anniversary cake. Its accusation made the room go silent. I know what you did last summer, 7 words. Simple, almost cliché, yet they stopped my heart mid-beat. Our living room, decorated with silver and blue streamers for our 15th anniversary, suddenly felt airless. 20 pairs of eyes darted between me and Daniel, my husband, who stood frozen with the cake knife still in his hand. "What's that, honey?" My mother-in-law Betty's voice broke the silence, her southern drawl stretching the words. She reached for her reading glasses hanging from a beaded chain around her neck. I snatched the note before she could see it, crumpling it in my fist. "Just a silly joke," I said, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow even to my ears. "Probably from Mike." I shot an accusatory glance at Daniel's college buddy, who raised his hands in mock surrender. "Not me, Sarah. I save my pranks for birthdays." Daniel's eyes met mine across the room, questioning, concerned. He knew me well enough to see through my fake smile. 15 years of marriage had given him that superpower, but did he know what the note referred to? Could he possibly know about last summer? "Let's cut this beautiful cake," I announced, walking over to Daniel. My legs felt like they might give way beneath me. Our guests, momentarily confused, quickly returned to their conversations. Only Daniel remained silent as I positioned myself beside him. "What did it say?" he whispered, his breath warm against my ear. "Nothing important," I lied, taking the knife from his hand. Together we cut into the 3-tiered anniversary cake, smiling for the obligatory photos. Flash, click, flash. Each burst of light felt like an interrogation. Later that night, after all our guests had left and Daniel had fallen asleep, I sat alone in our kitchen. The house in our quiet Cambridge neighborhood was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing by outside. I smoothed out the crumpled note on the granite countertop, studying the typed letters. No signature. No clue about who might have placed it under our cake. Last summer. Cape Cod, while Daniel was at his medical conference in Chicago. I thought I'd been careful. I thought no one knew about Jason, the sailing instructor with sun-bleached hair and a smile that made me forget, temporarily, the growing distance between Daniel and me. It wasn't supposed to be anything serious, just a brief escape from the monotony my life had become. A few stolen afternoons on his boat, a handful of text messages that I'd immediately deleted, and one impulsive night in his beachfront cottage when a summer storm had provided the perfect excuse not to drive back to my rental. I'd ended it before returning to Cambridge, before resuming my role as Dr. Sarah Lindstrom, respected psychology professor, devoted wife to one of Boston's top cardiologists. I'd buried the memory so deeply that sometimes I could almost convince myself it never happened. But someone knew. Someone had been watching. I took my phone from my pocket and scrolled through my contacts. Jason's number was long gone, deleted in a moment of guilt-ridden resolve. I had no way of reaching him, of asking if he'd somehow found out where I lived, if this was his idea of rekindling what never should have been kindled in the first place. The sound of footsteps on the stairs made me jump. I quickly tucked the note into my pocket. "Can't sleep?" Daniel appeared in the doorway, his hair tousled, eyes heavy with interrupted sleep. "Just cleaning up the last few things," I said, gesturing vaguely to the already spotless kitchen. He crossed the room and put his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. "It was a great party. 15 years. Can you believe it?" I leaned back against him, fighting the urge to confess everything. That would be the right thing to do, the honest thing. But I couldn't bear to see the hurt in his eyes, to risk destroying what we'd built together because of one summer mistake. "I'm proud of us," I said instead, and meant it. The next morning, I woke to find Daniel already gone, called in for an emergency surgery. A note on his pillow. "Early case. Back by dinner. Love you." Simple. Honest. Nothing like the note still burning a hole in my pocket. I showered and dressed for work, trying to focus on my upcoming lecture rather than the anonymous threat. Maybe it was just a prank after all. Or maybe someone had confused me with someone else. The alternative, that someone had deliberately planted that note to expose my secret, was too terrifying to contemplate. As I gathered my lecture notes, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Did you enjoy the note, Professor? There's more where that came from. Check your office mailbox." My blood ran cold. This was no mistake, no prank. This was deliberate. And whoever was behind it knew where I worked. I drove to the university in a daze, my mind racing through possibilities. A student with a grudge? A colleague with suspicious eyes? Or someone from Cape Cod who had followed me back to my real life? The psychology department was quiet when I arrived, most faculty still at home enjoying the final days of summer break before the semester began. I hurried to the mailroom, my heels clicking against the polished floor. My mailbox contained the usual assortment of department memos, academic journals, and a small manila envelope with no return address. With trembling fingers, I tore it open. Inside was a photograph. Me and Jason on his boat, his arm around my waist, my head thrown back in laughter, and a note. $10,000 by Friday, or your husband receives copies of all the photos. Instructions to follow. Blackmail. So that was the game. Not exposure for exposure's sake, but for profit. I slumped against the wall, the photograph clutched in my hand. How had I been so stupid, so reckless? One momentary lapse in judgment, and now everything I valued was at risk. My phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. "Don't go to the police, Professor. I'm closer than you think." I looked up sharply, scanning the empty mailroom, the hallway beyond. Was my blackmailer watching me right now? The thought sent a chill down my spine. I had 4 days to find $10,000 and figure out how to end this nightmare before it destroyed my marriage. 4 days to confront the consequences of a mistake I'd spent a year trying to forget. What I didn't know then was that the note under the cake was just the beginning. That anniversary night would mark not just 15 years of marriage, but the start of a spiral that would expose secrets far darker than my brief summer indiscretion. Back in my office, I locked the door and collapsed into my chair. The photograph stared up at me from my desk, undeniable evidence of my betrayal. I flipped it over, unable to bear the sight of my own smiling face, so unaware of the consequences to come. $10,000. It might as well have been $1 million. While Daniel and I lived comfortably, most of our money was tied up in our mortgage, retirement funds, and Daniel's student loan payments. We had a joint savings account with about $15,000, our emergency fund that had taken years to build. Taking from it would certainly raise questions from Daniel, who reviewed our finances each month with the same precision he applied to his surgical procedures. I had a separate account, money inherited from my grandmother that I'd been saving for a rainy day, just over $8,000. Not enough, but close. My phone buzzed again, making me flinch. "Don't think too hard, Professor. $10,000 is a small price for your perfect life." How did they know I was weighing my options? Unless... I stood up and moved to the window, scanning the quad below. Students were beginning to arrive for the fall semester, moving in clusters across the grass, but none seemed to be paying any attention to the psychology building. I turned back to my office, seeing it through new eyes. Was there a camera? A listening device? Paranoia was setting in, clouding my judgment. I needed to think clearly. Psychology was my field. I understood human behavior, motivation. I could figure this out. The blackmailer knew intimate details of my life, where I lived, where I worked, my schedule. This wasn't random. This was someone with access, someone who had been watching me closely. I pulled out a legal pad and began listing everyone who had been at our anniversary party, family members, colleagues, neighbors, old friends. I crossed off names as I went. My parents too traditional and technologically challenged to orchestrate something like this. Daniel's mother, Betty, who could barely operate her cell phone. Our neighbors, the Johnsons, who had been in Europe until 3 days before the party. 20 guests, and none seemed likely candidates. Then I remembered. Eliza, my research assistant, had helped with the party preparations. She'd been in our house the day before, helping me arrange flowers and set up. She had access, opportunity. And she'd been acting strangely lately, ever since I'd denied her request to be listed as co-author on my latest paper. But blackmail? It seemed extreme, even for ambitious Eliza. A knock on my door startled me from my thoughts. "Sarah, you in there?" It was Alan Reynolds, the department chair. I quickly swept the photograph and my notes into a drawer. "Just a minute," I called, taking a deep breath to compose myself before opening the door. Alan stood in the hallway, his perpetually worried expression more pronounced than usual. "Sorry to bother you during the break, but we need to talk about Jason Mercer." My heart stopped. Jason Mercer? The visiting professor from UCLA? He's arriving next week, and we need to finalize his office arrangements. I was thinking of putting him next to you, since your research interests align. Jason. From UCLA. Not my Jason from Cape Cod. The relief made me lightheaded. "Sarah, are you all right? You look pale." "I'm fine," I managed. "Just a migraine coming on. And yes, putting Professor Mercer next to me makes sense." After Alan left, I sank back into my chair. The coincidence of the name had rattled me more than I wanted to admit. I needed to get a grip, to approach this methodically. If I paid the blackmailer, would it end? Or would they come back for more? An endless cycle of demands. My phone rang. Daniel. I considered letting it go to voicemail, not trusting my voice. But that would only raise his suspicions. "Hey," I answered, striving for normalcy. "Surgery went well," he said, the satisfaction evident in his voice. "I was thinking of picking up dinner from that Italian place you like. Celebration for a life saved and 15 years of us." The tenderness in his voice made my chest ache with guilt. "That sounds perfect. Everything okay? You sound off." "Just tired. It was a late night." "Tell me about it. I'm still finding confetti in my shoes." He laughed. "See you at home. Love you." "Love you too," I whispered, ending the call. That evening, as Daniel and I shared pasta and wine in our kitchen, I studied his face. The lines around his eyes had deepened over the years, his dark hair now threaded with silver at the temples. He'd been working too hard lately, taking on extra surgeries, attending conferences. We'd been like ships passing in the night for months before my trip to Cape Cod. Was that an excuse for what I'd done? No, but it was part of the context, part of the slow drift that had occurred so gradually I barely noticed until we were miles apart while sitting at the same table. "I've been thinking," Daniel said, twirling linguine around his fork. "We should take a trip. A real one. Not just you accompanying me to a medical conference or me tagging along to one of your speaking engagements. What did you have in mind? Italy, maybe? Or France? Somewhere we can get lost in for a while." He reached across the table for my hand. "I miss you, Sarah." The simple admission nearly broke me. "I miss you too," I said, and it was true. I missed the US we used to be, before careers and ambitions and the mundane responsibilities of adulthood had dulled the edges of our relationship. "Then let's do it. 2 weeks October break. I'll arrange coverage for my patients." I squeezed his hand, pushing aside thoughts of the blackmailer, the photograph, the money I needed to find. "It's a date." After dinner, as Daniel showered, I sat in our home office and transferred $8,000 from my private account to a new one I'd set up that afternoon. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. I'd figure out the rest somehow. My phone buzzed with another text. "Tomorrow. Noon. Boston Common by the bandstand. Bring what you have. So soon." I'd expected to have more time. I typed back, my first response to my tormentor. "I don't have all of it yet." The reply came immediately. "Then bring what you do have, and the rest by Friday." Don't disappoint me, Professor. That night, I lay awake beside Daniel, listening to his steady breathing. What would he do if he knew? Would he forgive me? Leave me? After 15 years, I still wasn't sure. Daniel believed in honesty above all else. It was why he was such a good doctor, such a trusted colleague. He faced difficult truths every day and expected no less from those around him. In the morning, I told Daniel I had meetings at the university, a half-truth that tasted bitter on my tongue. I dressed carefully in jeans and a light sweater, casual enough for a walk in the park, but with a jacket pocket deep enough to hold an envelope of cash. Boston Common was busy with lunchtime crowds when I arrived, office workers enjoying the late summer sunshine, tourists consulting maps, students sprawled on the grass. I made my way to the bandstand, scanning faces, looking for... What? I realized I had no idea who I was meeting, what they looked like. My phone buzzed. The bench facing the pond. Sit. I found the bench and sat, clutching my purse with the envelope inside. Minutes ticked by. People passed. No one approached. Then a woman sat beside me, mid-30s, professionally dressed, a laptop bag over her shoulder. She could have been another professor, a lawyer, a business executive. Nothing about her seemed threatening. "Professor Lindstrom," she said without looking at me. "You brought the money?" I stared at her profile, trying to place her. Had she been at the party? Was she connected to the university? "Some of it. Who are you?" She turned then, and I gasped. Her face was familiar in a way I couldn't immediately place, like looking at a distorted reflection. "You don't recognize me, do you?" A small, cruel smile played at her lips. "I'm Jessica. Jessica Winters." The name meant nothing to me. I shook my head. Maybe this will help. She pulled out her phone, showed me a photograph. A young woman in a hospital bed, pale, thin, tubes running from her arms. "My sister, Rachel. Your husband's patient. The one he killed last year." My mind raced. Daniel had lost a patient last summer. A young woman with a congenital heart defect. He'd been devastated, questioning his judgment, his skills. It had been one of the reasons for his increased workload afterward, taking on more surgeries, as if to prove to himself that he was still a good doctor. "That was a tragic case," I said carefully. "But Daniel didn't kill her. Sometimes surgeries are unsuccessful despite the best efforts." "Save it." Jessica cut me off. "I read the report. He made a mistake, a fatal one. And then he covered it up, with help from the hospital. Called it complications, instead of what it was. Negligence." I shook my head. "That's not true. Daniel would never—" "The money," she interrupted. "Give me what you have." With trembling hands, I passed her the envelope. She counted it quickly. $8,000. Not enough. "I'll get the rest. I just need more time." She stood, tucking the envelope into her bag. "Friday. All of it. Or not only does your husband learn about your summer fling, but the medical board learns about his deadly mistake." She leaned closer. "And trust me, I have proof of both." As she walked away, blending seamlessly into the crowd, I remained frozen on the bench. This wasn't just about me anymore. Jessica Winters wasn't just threatening my marriage. She was threatening Daniel's career, his reputation, everything he'd worked for. And I had no idea if her accusations against him were true. The walk back to my car was a blur, Jessica's words echoing in my head. Daniel, making a fatal mistake? Covering it up? It seemed impossible. Daniel was meticulous, ethical to a fault. He agonized over every complication, spent hours reviewing his procedures, looking for ways to improve. The idea that he would deliberately hide an error went against everything I knew about him. But did I really know him? After all, he didn't know about Jason, about my betrayal. We all have secrets, compartments of our lives we keep hidden, even from those closest to us. By the time I reached campus, my shock had hardened into resolve. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. My afternoon classes were still 2 weeks away, giving me time to focus on this crisis. First step, learn everything I could about Rachel Winters and her surgery. Daniel kept copies of his most challenging cases at home, in his study. Not the official medical records, those stayed at the hospital, but his own notes, observations, reflections. It was part of his process, his way of learning from each patient. Our house was empty when I arrived home. I went straight to Daniel's study, a room I rarely entered out of respect for his privacy. His desk was organized with military precision, pens lined up, papers stacked neatly, medical journals arranged by date. The filing cabinet in the corner was locked, but I knew where he kept the key, taped under his desk drawer, a hiding place so obvious it made me smile despite everything. I found the file labeled Winters R and spread its contents across the desk. Daniel's handwritten notes were supplemented with printouts of test results, surgical plans, and post-operative reports. I wasn't a doctor, but after 15 years of marriage to one, I'd picked up enough medical terminology to follow the narrative. Rachel Winters, 29, admitted with chest pain and shortness of breath. Diagnosed with a ventricular septal defect, a hole in the wall separating the lower chambers of her heart that had gone undetected until adulthood. Surgery recommended. Risks explained. Consent obtained. Daniel's surgical notes were detailed, documenting each step, each decision. There was a moment of concern, unexpected bleeding, quickly controlled. The procedure completed, initial recovery promising. Then complications. Arrhythmia, cardiac arrest, resuscitation attempts unsuccessful. Daniel's personal notes written in the margins. Could I have missed something? Review CT scans again. Discuss with Dr. Patel. These weren't the notes of someone covering up a mistake. They were the anguished reflections of a doctor who had lost a patient despite his best efforts. I sat back, relief washing over me. Jessica was wrong. Or lying. Daniel hadn't killed her sister. He'd tried to save her. And sometimes, despite the best medical care, patients die. But that didn't solve my immediate problem. Jessica still had the photographs of me and Jason. She still wanted her money, and she clearly believed her sister had been wronged. My phone rang. An unknown number. I answered cautiously. Professor. It was Jessica. I see you've been doing your homework. My blood ran cold. How did she know what I was doing? What do you want now? Just making sure you're taking me seriously. The rest of the money, Friday. And I'd appreciate if you stopped rummaging through your husband's files. Those are confidential, you know. How do you... I stood up, moving to the window. Was she watching the house? Let's just say I keep tabs on things that interest me, like your husband's career, your affair, the way you both keep secrets from each other. If you think Daniel made a mistake with your sister, go to the medical board. File a complaint. Why the blackmail? A harsh laugh. I tried that route. They closed ranks, protected one of their own. This way, I get justice and compensation. It's not justice, it's extortion. Call it what you want. Just get the money. She hung up. I gathered Daniel's files, returning them exactly as I'd found them. As I closed the drawer, my eyes fell on another folder, unlabeled, tucked at the back. Curiosity pushed me to open it. Inside were bank statements for an account I didn't recognize. Withdrawals, large ones, $5,000 here, $10,000 there. Over the past year, more than $50,000 had moved through this account. My hands trembled as I examined the papers. What was Daniel doing with this money? We shared everything, or so I thought. A secret bank account seemed so out of character for him, for us. Unless, was he paying someone off? Had Jessica approached him too, or was this something else entirely? I photographed the statements with my phone, then carefully replaced the folder. My mind was spinning with possibilities, none of them comforting. That evening, I watched Daniel across the dinner table with new eyes. He seemed tired but content, talking about his day, his patients, asking about mine. Was it all an act? Were we both just going through the motions, each hiding behind a facade of normalcy? Daniel, I interrupted his story about a colleague's retirement party. Do you remember a patient named Rachel Winters? His fork paused halfway to his mouth. A flicker of something, pain, guilt, crossed his face before he composed himself. Of course. Young woman, VSD repair last year. She didn't make it. Why do you ask? I ran into someone today who knew her. He set his fork down slowly. At the university? No, just out. In the city. It got me thinking about the cases you lose. How hard that must be. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Rachel was special. So young, with her whole life ahead of her. Her surgery should have been routine, but there were complications. He pushed his plate away, appetite gone. I still think about her. Wonder if I could have done something differently. The guilt in his eyes seemed genuine. Not the guilt of someone who had made a fatal error, but the natural second-guessing of a doctor who had lost a patient. I'm sure you did everything you could, I said softly. I try to tell myself that. He stood, carrying his plate to the sink. I think I'm going to turn in early. Early surgery tomorrow. I watched him go, more confused than ever. His reaction seemed to confirm what I'd read in his notes, that Rachel's death had been a tragedy, not negligence. But it didn't explain the secret bank account, the large withdrawals. After clearing the dishes, I went to our bedroom. Daniel was already asleep, or pretending to be. I took my laptop to the living room and began searching for information about Rachel Winters. Her obituary was brief. Loving sister, devoted daughter, passionate about animal rescue. There was a memorial page where friends had posted memories, photographs. Rachel smiling with a dog in her arms. Rachel at the beach, laughing. Rachel looking remarkably like the woman who had sat beside me on the bench today. I dug deeper, searching for any public records related to her death. Nothing about a malpractice claim or investigation. If Jessica had filed a complaint with the medical board, it wasn't public knowledge. Then I found something. A small news item from 6 months ago. A new cardiac research fund established at Boston General in memory of Rachel Winters. Funded by an anonymous donor. Initial contribution, $50,000, the exact amount missing from Daniel's secret account. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Making progress on the rest of my money? I ignored it, my mind racing to piece together this new information. Daniel had established a research fund in Rachel's name. Why keep that secret from me? Was it guilt? A sense of responsibility for her death, even if he hadn't been negligent? Or was it something else entirely? I needed to confront him, to ask directly about the account, the withdrawals, the research fund. But that would mean admitting I'd gone through his files, invaded his privacy, and I was in no position to claim the moral high ground, not with my own secret hanging over me. We were both keeping things from each other, creating distance neither of us had intended. The next morning, I woke to find Daniel already gone again, another early surgery, another note on his pillow, thinking about Italy. Love you. I made a decision. I would get the remaining $2,000 somehow, pay Jessica off on Friday, and put an end to this nightmare. Then Daniel and I would go to Italy, and somewhere between Rome and Florence, I would tell him everything. About Jason, about the blackmail, about finding his secret account. We would clear the air completely, rebuild on honesty. But first, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. And that meant confronting Jessica Winters one more time. I texted her. We need to talk, not about money, about your sister. Her reply came quickly. Nothing to talk about. I know about the research fund, $50,000 in Rachel's name. A longer pause this time. Then, meet me. Same place. 1 hour. Boston Common was quieter this morning. The summer heat already building, keeping all but the most determined joggers and dog walkers indoors. Jessica was waiting at the same bench, sunglasses hiding her eyes, her resemblance to her sister more apparent now that I knew to look for it. You should have just taken the money and left us alone, I said, sitting beside her. Us? There is no us, Professor. There's you and your secrets, and there's your husband and his. Daniel didn't kill your sister. I've seen his notes, the surgical reports. Her death was a tragedy, but not negligence. Jessica removed her sunglasses, her eyes red-rimmed. Then why did he pay? $50,000 to a research fund in her name. Anonymous, but I figured it out. Why pay if he didn't feel responsible? I took a deep breath. Because that's who he is. He cares about his patients, even the ones he loses, especially them. He could have saved her. She trusted him. Jessica's voice cracked. She was all I had left after our parents died. For the first time, I saw past my own fear and guilt to the raw grief in front of me. Jessica had lost her sister, her only family. She was lashing out, looking for someone to blame, somewhere to direct her pain. I'm truly sorry about Rachel, I said gently. But blackmailing me, threatening Daniel's career, it won't bring her back, and it won't give you the closure you're looking for. What do you know about closure? She snapped. More than you might think. I'm a psychologist, remember? I work with grief, trauma. I know the patterns, the stages. And I know that what you're doing now, it's just prolonging your pain. She looked away, towards the pond where ducks glided across the surface. The money helps. Makes me feel like something good can come from her death. Like the research fund, that's something good. That's Daniel's way of honoring Rachel. of trying to ensure other patients with her condition have better outcomes. Jessica was silent for a long moment. Then, I still want the rest of the money. And then what? It ends? No more threats? No more photographs? She nodded slowly. One more payment. Then we're done. I stood to leave, then paused. Jessica, there are better ways to deal with grief than this. If you ever want to talk, professionally I mean, my door is open. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Always the professor, aren't you? As I walked away, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Relief that this might soon be over, sadness for Jessica's loss, and a growing determination to fix what was broken in my marriage. The secrets between Daniel and me had created a space where doubt and suspicion could flourish. It was time to close that gap. Back home, I made a call to the bank, arranging to withdraw the remaining $2,000 from our joint savings account. Daniel would notice, but by then I hoped we would be in Italy, facing each other with complete honesty for the first time in too long. That evening, when Daniel returned home, I suggested a walk along the Charles River. As we strolled hand in hand, watching the sunset paint the water gold and crimson, I gathered my courage. Daniel, there's something I need to tell you. He stopped, turning to face me. That sounds serious. It is. I took a deep breath. I know about the research fund for Rachel Winters. His expression shifted from surprise to wariness. How did you... It doesn't matter. What matters is that you kept it from me. Just like I've kept things from you. Sarah, what are you saying? The words stuck in my throat. After all the rehearsing, all the planning, I couldn't bring myself to say it aloud. I think we've both been hiding parts of ourselves, creating distance without meaning to. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching mine. I didn't tell you about the fund because I didn't want you to worry about the money, about why it mattered so much to me. Did you blame yourself for what happened to her? He nodded slowly. Not because I made a mistake. I've reviewed that surgery 100 times. I did everything right. But sometimes that's not enough, and I needed something positive to come from her death. Something that might help the next Rachel Winters who comes into my OR. I squeezed his hand. You should have told me. I know. And whatever it is you're not telling me now, I'm ready to hear it. No matter what. The moment stretched between us, filled with 15 years of shared history and the weight of unspoken truths. I opened my mouth to confess everything. Jason, the blackmail, Jessica, when my phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from an unknown number, but not Jessica's. The truth will set you free, Professor. Check the latest issue of the Boston Medical Journal. Page 23. My blood ran cold. Daniel, do you have a copy of this month's BMJ? In my study. Why? Without answering, I hurried back to the house, Daniel following behind, confusion etched on his face. In his study, I found the journal, flipping frantically to page 23. There it was. A small announcement in the professional notes section. Dr. Daniel Lindstrom has been appointed to lead a new cardiac research initiative funded in memory of Rachel Winters. Dr. Lindstrom's innovative approach to ventricular septal repair has shown promising results in reducing post-operative complications. Not an exposure. Not blackmail. Recognition for Daniel's work. Sarah? What's going on? I turned to find Daniel in the doorway, concern written across his features. I think I've been played. I handed him the journal, pointing to the announcement. He scanned it, frowning. This wasn't supposed to be published yet. The hospital was waiting for the formal launch next month. He looked up at me. But why does this matter to you? And what does played mean? The front door chimed. Our doorbell. Daniel went to answer it while I remained in the study, trying to make sense of what was happening. Moments later, he returned, a confused expression on his face. It's for you. A delivery. In the living room, a courier waited with a small package. I signed for it, hands trembling slightly, and waited until the door closed behind him before opening it. Inside was a USB drive and a note. The only copies. The past is past. Focus on the future. J. Sarah? Daniel's voice was quiet, serious. I think it's time you told me what's going on. And so I did. Everything. Cape Cod, Jason, the note under the cake, the blackmail, Jessica Winters and her accusations. The words poured out, painful but cleansing, like lancing a wound. When I finished, Daniel was silent, his expression unreadable. Then to my surprise he laughed, a short, incredulous sound. You were blackmailed because of Rachel's case? Because her sister thought I was negligent. I nodded, confused by his reaction. Sarah, Rachel's surgery was videotaped. It's used in teaching now, as an example of how to handle unexpected complications. There's no way I could have covered up a mistake. Too many people were watching, reviewing. The hospital's legal team went through everything with a fine-tooth comb. Then why did Jessica think grief does strange things to people? Makes them look for reasons, for someone to blame. I've seen it countless times. He ran a hand through his hair. But the blackmail, the photographs of you and Jason, that's real? My heart sank. Yes. I'm so sorry, Daniel. It was a mistake, a terrible lapse in judgment. I was lonely, feeling disconnected from you, but that's no excuse. Daniel was quiet again, his eyes on the USB drive in my hand. And that contains the evidence? I nodded. He took it from me gently, turned it over in his palm. You know what? I don't need to see these. He placed the drive on the coffee table. What I need is for us to talk, really talk, about what's happened to us, how we drifted so far apart that secrets seemed easier than honesty. You don't want to leave me? Sarah, 15 years isn't something I'm willing to throw away because of one mistake. A big one, yes, but still just one moment in thousands we've shared. He took my hands in his. I'm hurt. I'm angry. But I still love you. And I think we can find our way back if we're both willing to try. Tears filled my eyes as I squeezed his hands. I want that more than anything. Later that night, as we lay in bed talking with the honesty we hadn't shared in years, my phone buzzed one final time. A text from Jessica. Research fund announcement moved up. Your husband's work will help others like Rachel. We're even now. Goodbye, Professor. I showed Daniel the message, and he nodded slowly. So she knew all along that I wasn't negligent. I think she needed someone to blame, then found a way to channel that grief into something productive. The blackmail was wrong, but maybe in her mind, she was balancing scales somehow. And the photographs? How did she even get those? I shook my head. I don't know. Maybe she was vacationing in Cape Cod too. Saw us together. Recognized me later when she looked into you after Rachel's death. Or maybe Jason wasn't as discreet as I thought. Daniel was quiet for a moment. I don't think we'll ever know everything. But what matters now is what we do going forward. 2 weeks later, we boarded a plane to Rome. As we took our seats, Daniel reached for my hand. Ready for a fresh start? He asked. I nodded, feeling lighter than I had in months. The note beneath the anniversary cake had shattered our carefully constructed facade, forcing us to confront the secrets we'd been keeping. The accusation had made the room go silent. But in that silence, we'd found our way back to each other's truth. Sometimes it takes a crisis to rebuild something stronger. As our plane lifted into the clouds, I knew that our 15th anniversary hadn't marked an ending, but a new beginning. One built on the understanding that even the deepest secrets, once shared, lose their power to divide us. The note had been right, in its way. The truth had set us free.